Hello everyone, it's DuckFairy07. Today we are playing my updated brew of Esper or Full Color Flash. So updated it with the Orcish Bowmaster, cool card from new edition that has a flash, and it's pretty good in this archetype, pretty huge upgrade. Initially in the original build, I played Spellsetter Sprites in this 2-drop slot of a card, like best available card with flash at that point. Also, there was some dress down in the main, and some more other stuff. But Orcish Bowmaster is a huge upgrade in a 2 mana slot for this deck. It also resolves the Ragavan problem. The 1 damage ping is great, and it's also good against One Ring, and I'm just very happy with it in this archetype. Okay, so this is a scam deck. It's a flash themed tribal deck playing Errant Giada. And Slitterwisp. Slitterwisp said when you play a card with flash, you draw a card and opponent lose 1 life. It's great. And Errant Giada says it also has a flash flying, and it says you can cast cards with flash and flying from the top of your library. So these 8 cards providing a lot of value in this deck, and also there is Ice Fang and Orcish Bowmasters, all good ephemerate targets. That's why we play 4 ephemerate and 4 undying spells. There is also, of course, some pitch elementals, Grief and Solitude in the main, and Subtlety on the sideboard. We also have Ertai Resurrected here. Ertai Resurrected is another cool card with flash that can be a removal or a counter spell, and it can also be very cool used in this deck to counter the evoke trigger plus draw a card, which can be like incredibly powerful. And it basically imitates the Restoration Angel, kind of cooler version for this variant of the deck. Okay, so we have a Leyland Binding in the deck. This card is also flash, so it has interaction with all these um, main enablers for this deck. It's also very good removal at the point, maybe probably best in the modern right now. Okay, so that is it. Some ephemerates, undying spells, and a lot of card draw, card advantage, plus pitch elementals. On the sideboard, we have Subtlety, Force of Negation, Dress Down is another cool card that has a flash, and it works very well with Slitterisp and Errant and Giada. Celestial Purge as additional Blood Moon and a Scam and other Red X solution. Temporary Lockdown, mostly for Scales and Hammer Time. And that is it. Okay, so we can now go to the gameplay and watch some games. I just played a league, finished 4-1. So we are going to go through that and see the matches. Okay, so let's start with the match 1. Okay, so I just got to mention in this league I played instead of Earthday Resurrected, I played 2 Samwise, but I wasn't really happy with the Sam. So for this deck, so I decided for a further gameplay to go with um, try the Earth Resurrected. Okay, so my opponent was on Dice Factory, so they went for the Surge node to spend their turn doing that, and I gone with Leyland Binding in response. I think this deck plays One Ring, so Orcish Bowmaster is pretty good here. I played my Orcish Bowmaster, so I can start attacking. I also didn't have an Overgrown Tomb in this initial variant, so I wasn't able to tutor it a couple of times when it would be good. But I think like this will be a very good card for the deck. Very good land for the deck, very good addition. So I decided to definitely wanted to go with it. But for all the future games, so I replaced the Refine's Tower. And I think the Refine's Tower just wasn't so necessary. The other two triumphs were more interesting and more helpful. Okay, so went for a blink on the Orcish Bowmaster to grow my army and still ping 1 damage. Got the Slitterisp. My opponent was having trouble with mana, but they definitely found it at this point. I had a lot of mana with Surge Node and 2 Manifold Keys. They resolved the One Ring. I had the Orcish Bowmaster on the field, so it was a close game. I needed the Slitterwisp can very easily chain. If you can get some stuff from the top, you can easily chain a lot of these Slitterwisp triggers. So I went for the Slitterwisp to try to draw Leyland Binding. I find Ice Fang Kotal, which is good for the next turn. I wasn't able to target my opponent this turn with the Orcish Bowmaster abilities. They did a lot of counters on the Overflowing Chalice, put a lot of mana in their mana pool, and went for the card, the Great Creator, tutoring for the card from the sideboard, and they found Ensnaring Bridge. But yeah, Ensnaring Bridge wasn't really that important. I was hoping to chain some spells with the Slitterisp and try to kill opponent that way. Also, if they try to draw with the One Ring, they lose life from the Orcish Bowmasters, so it's not really a huge threat for me. I had the 2 Slitterisp and the Ice Fang in hand, so that was my hope of and my plan to win the game that way. So I started with the Ice Fang, draw 2 cards there, and the third one from the Ice Fang, and then found the Orcish Bowmaster to deal 2 more damage, put my opponent on 3 life, but unfortunately I draw 3 lands from the Slitterisp effect, and I wasn't able to finish the remaining few points of damage to my opponent, and in that time they were able to resolve this very large Walking Ballista, which then killed most of my creatures. And with the Ensnaring Bridge on the field, I think this was it. My opponent was able to like kill almost everything I have, and just to finish me with the ballista. Yeah, that was it. So we can go on to the next game. I was really close to winning this one, but yeah, I just had a few bad. If I drew another card with flash, I would probably be able to finish things off. But next game, I started with a Grief Scam and had the Leyland Binding in my hand, which was a very good start. So I discarded the Chalice and the Surge Node, leaving my opponent with Power Conduit and Mystic Forge. At this point, they only had Mystic Forge in hand, and I had a 3-turn clock. I discarded the Core Tapper, leaving them with 2 Mystic Forges in hand, and I had very close to lethal next turn, and I top deck the Orcish Bowmaster to finish my opponent on the same turn, so that was the game. Okay, so let's check out the game 3. Okay, in the game 3, I again had the start with the Ephemerate. They played two very strong spells on turn one, but still my grief turn one was good. I took a power conduit and discarded the power conduit expedition map, and my opponent was now on one life, one card in hand. They searched for the Mystic Forge, and that was the last card in their hand, so I was definitely going to blink the Grief to discard the last card in their hand, leaving them on the field with the Astral Canopia and the Surge Node, which is good because Canopia gives 3 mana, 4, but I found Leyline Binding to get rid of it, so it wasn't a problem anymore. I was now able to start attacking, also holding Ephemerate for their draw step. Yeah, but their draw step was Bosage, so Ephemerate wasn't really great there, but I still got a land to play the Ice Fang and then Ephemerate the Ice Fang on my turn to draw additional card, which is good, and also get another Leyland Binding to remove their Canopia van with many counters. So it was a very good position for me. Opponent top decked 0 cards in hand, top decked another land. I played the Errant and Giada, and now I see the top of my deck. I can play differently, so I play the fetch to shuffle the library. I find the Leyline Binding on the top, and I wait for them to use the Surge Node, then cast the Leyline Binding from the top of my library, exiling a second Canopia, and my opponent was basically now almost dead next turn, very close to dead. Not enough. Now I have the Marsh Flats, and Marsh Flats is very good. All the fetches are very good with the Errant and Giada. You can use it to shuffle the top of your library and try to find stuff you need that way. My opponent top decks a Core Tapper, and yeah, so that card doesn't do much, and that is it. There is not much they can top deck at this point. It's mostly GG. So that is it. That is match one. We can now go watch the second one. Okay, this is match two. Starting the decent hand, Ice Fang, Bowmaster, Binding against this time against Tron. So with the main deck, this deck is not great against Tron, but post board we have Subtlety plus Force of Negation plus Leyline Binding, so a lot of very useful stuff. And they don't really have a solution for the Slitterwisp, so Slitterwisp can quickly win games in those matchups. Okay, they found the Tron. I play another Wurmcoil. I didn't care much about Wurmcoil at this point. I cared about other stuff. They didn't have it, but still, like they're like one good top deck away from winning this game. So I cast another Leyline Binding, exile their second Wurmcoil, but like if they get the 8 mana or this Oblivion Stone or the Ulamog, this game basically finishes. So they got the Oblivion Stone, killing both of my bindings, and the game is not over at this point. I have the Errant and Giada, I can hit good stuff with it, like Solitude, obviously. But I had a Solitude on top, so I cast it immediately. But my opponent has Tron, has like more than 10 mana, and they have a lot of good top decks available to them. I got had a ley line on the top of my deck, so in case my Giada survives the turn, I put a stop on upkeep and then start playing stuff from the top. Okay, my opponent finds another worm coil. I play Binding. On the upkeep, I play the Slither Wisp. I play the Ice Fang, draw a card from the Slither Wisp ability, check out the top card on my of my library. I pitchcast the Grief to check my opponent's hand. I discard the Karn from their hand, kill the second Karn on the field with the Solitude, and pass the turn with another Solitude in my hand to get rid of the remaining Wormcoil Engine. So they had the Oblivion Stone to kill both of my bindings, but still I found a way to get rid of this. So unfortunately, I played the wrong land. I played the wrong land here, so I wasn't able to go for the Pitch Solitude and Malachi's Rebirth. I accidentally just selected the wrong land, so I was forced to just pitchcast Solitude to get rid of the Warren Coil. Unfortunately, but it didn't matter much at this point. I had the Slither Wisp and the Giada. When you have this, it's very hard to lose. As I said, this game I played the Samwise instead of Eren Giada, but I would definitely lose the Samwise from the top. I just didn't feel like Samwise was doing anything relevant for this deck. It just wasn't. It has flash, which is fine, but I draw it a lot of times and it wasn't useful any of those times. It just didn't do anything. It was 2 mana 2/1 that has flash. So basically, at that point, any 2 mana flash card would be playable, but I think there are better options. Maybe like a Dress Down in the main or the Errant and Giada in main, also Subtlety in the main. I think it's one of the best options, but I decided to go with the Errant and Giada because it has such a cool interaction with Evoke Elementals, just countering the Evoke ability plus drawing your card is pretty sweet. So I succeeded to outvalue my opponent with the Slither Wisp and Giada, so that was the game 1, which was really unfavorable, but I did it. Okay, so I decided to mulligan that first hand because it didn't have much cards good in the Tron matchup. It wasn't a bad hand overall, just didn't have good stuff for the matchup. This hand also didn't have a lot of useful stuff for this matchup, but I decided to keep 6, not to go lower than that. Okay, so I just shock in here to hold the Leyland Binding, but my draws weren't very good. My draws weren't very good, and I didn't have much chance to win with this type of hand. At least I got the another land, which is definitely what I needed. So finally, I was able to cast my Slither Wisp and start doing something. Unfortunately, I didn't have. Okay, I had the binding here to get rid of the Ugin and hold mana for Ephemerate or Giada, but at this point it's kind of well, my opponent has a lot of good top decks. Like obviously, Oblivion Stone is very good against Leyland bindings, killing my Slither Wisp, both bindings, and just getting the Eugen and Oblivion Stone back. It means it's pretty much unbeatable for me. So I concede on the next turn, and that was the game. Okay, so let's check out the game 3. Well, playing first with the force and the subtlety in the main. Let's see how I boarded. As I said, I boarded all the forces and all the subtleties in for these cards. Samwise, Ice Fang, and a couple of solitudes. That was it. Okay, so I was hoping for Grief here. Didn't get it. But I had a Slitterwisp. So I was hoping to resolve the Slitterwisp, then start drawing some flash cards and drawing cards, and then just start doing something relevant. Okay, I was finally able to start attacking here. My hand wasn't great. Definitely wasn't great. Yeah. Okay, so opponent played the Verncoil, and the Verncoil is among easiest card for this deck to deal with. I don't know. I thought I was going to like do this on their turn, but then I decided to do it on my turn. Just draw a card from the Slitterwisp, exile the Verncoil. So I didn't attack for this. I missed those 3 damage with the Slitterwisp last turn. I was able to attack with the Slitterwisp. I drew the Errant and Giada and the Bowmasters. I decided to draw cards immediately. I was hoping to get Grief, and I did get it. So, with the Grief in hand, I was able to pitch cast it, check my opponent's hand. It was Oblivion Stone, and the Verncoil. So I was able to discard both of these cards, put my Grief into play, which is a very good clock. Almost my opponent had just 2 lands in hand, but they top deck the Karn, which was great. Top deck at this point, and I had a lot of I had Slitterwisp. When you have Slitterwisp plus Giada, you're able to really like dig a lot, and I did successfully find the Leyland Binding. On top, I had the Force of Negation also now, plus Ephemerate, plus another Slitterwisp on top, in case they like resolve the Kill Everything spell, Oblivion Stone. Okay, so they didn't find a solution for all of this, and they had to concede. That was the game 2. And we can now go on to the match 3. Okay, so match 3 was defeat, so we'll watch the wins first and the defeat in the end. Okay, so this was win number 4. I had a good hand, Bowmasters, Ice Fang, Slitterwisp, Rebirth, pretty good. I had two of the Undying spells. So Grief would be definitely great top deck. But it is fine even without it. I have a 2-drop, a 3-drop, and then Undying Spell, and another 2-drop for turn 4, so pretty good position for me. I decided to go for the Marsh Flats, which enables me to go find a swamp in case my opponent goes a Blood Moon, or I can just go for blue-black Watery Grave and just cast the Kotal. But my opponent had a Shadow of Doubt to prevent me from fetching, which was okay. So this means this is Black Coffers with One Ring, which is fine for me. I have Bowmasters in my deck. That card is pretty good in that matchup. So I decided to cast my Bowmaster immediately. I could have hold it, obviously. Probably should have done this, but it really doesn't matter much. The only difference is they're able to like go for the damnation if they want to use it. They had the Sheltered Addict here. to kill my Bowmaster. It was fine. I still had a Slither Wisp. I had a multiple of Undying spells, Ice Fang, a lot of stuff. So I just attacked my opponent for one. But kind of maybe I shouldn't let this Orcish Bowmaster. I shouldn't play it this early and let it die. Maybe I should have played some other spells first, and maybe like just hold the Bowmaster in the hand. Unfortunately, my Slitherwisp died. Slitherwisp was really important for my hand at this point. I play the Samwise here. So problem with Samwise in this deck is that you just play two Samwise and don't have another way to tempt the ring. So you get only the first ring ability, which is okay, but like the second one is really important to start doing drawing discarding, and you can't really ever do that with just two Samwise in your deck without other ring tempt you abilities. That's why I felt like it's really mediocre and not doing much. For this deck, I had kind of weird hand. A lot of these undying spells in hand, not doing much, so a lot of mediocre draws. I was able to start attacking here, but yeah, like the one ring just did was my opponent was a too good position here with 9 cards in hand, additional draws from the one ring, and I just didn't have almost any chance in this match, so I concede pretty soon, and that was the game. So let's check out the next match, the next game, sorry. Let's see how I boarded. Again, I removed a few of the Ice Fangs, Samwises, and a few of my Solitudes, because Solitudes just don't do too much against these coffers. I still left 2 of them in because they have some creatures, and that's it. I was hoping for a scam spell or ephemerate, but like casting Grief for 4 mana when you're on the play is pretty good too. So I went for the Bowmasters. I have a Force of Negation to protect them if needed. I went for the Bowmasters on turn 2 just to start attacking, start doing damage. And I have a hard cast of Force of Negation available here. Didn't want uh, to play into Shadow of Doubt with the fetch, so I just played Breeding Pool, hold Force of Negation if needed, and I decided to use it when they tried to kill my Orcish Bowmaster. Okay, so again I had like 3 mana available here for the Force of Negation. Unfortunately I draw into just another land, which wasn't very good, and I was able to find basic, and I went for another attack with the Orcish Bowmaster, putting my opponent to 15 life and then hard casting the Grief, taking the Damnation from my opponent's hand. At this point they had 2 One Rings in their hand, but I had Orcish Bowmaster on the field, so I was okay with them playing that. I just cast another. I just play another land and pass the turn with holding Force of Negation and Slither Wisp. So every ability from the One Ring Orcish Bowmaster does damage and grows my army token. So my opponent plays another One Ring, and I decide to let it resolve. My Bowmaster is slowly doing damage, growing the army token, and I was still able to hold Force of Negation, plus play my Slitterwisp. Slitterwisp can also do damage just above, doesn't matter that one ring is in play, because it doesn't target, it just says that opponent loses life. Okay, so I played Errant and Giada, trigger my Slitterwisp, find another Wisp on the top, but I decided to just pass the turn to be able to hold the Force of Negation if I need it. So this was a pretty good position for me. Opponent also loses life in the upkeep and loses life every time they draw with the Orcish Bowmaster on the field. They find Cabal Coffers and go for the third One Ring. I decide to let it resolve because I have a Slitterwisp in the field, I have Slitterwisp on the top of my library, which means I can probably kill my opponent even if opponent uh, has protection from everything. So I decide to use my Force of Negation to protect my Bowmaster. Bowmaster was really important here. I go for the fetch. Again, I shuffle, try to find a different card on the top of my library, and just pass the turn with the Orcish Bowmaster in hand, and the Undying Malice, a pretty good position for me with two Slitterwisps. Orcish Bowmaster is already uh, a lot of damage. So I play the Bowmasters, I draw two cards, put my opponent on one, and they didn't have a solution. They concede, and that was the game. Okay, so let's check out the deciding game. Game 3 in this win number 4 against Mono Black Coffers. This time I had Grief, but I didn't have Ephemerate or the Undying spell. Also had a Force of Negation, which can be definitely pretty good in this matchup. So started with Indata Triumph. I have turn 2 Ice Fang, into turn 3 Slitterwisp, Grief, whatever. Okay, so opponent goes with this time. This time I didn't have fetches, so didn't care about Shadow of Doubt. My opponent played the Chalice of the Void, but I also didn't care much about the Chalice. I had Leyline Binding if needed, but also I just didn't have any 1-mana spells in my hand at this point. So pretty good position as already said at this point. End of turn, of course, I cast the Ice Fang, draw a card, untap, play a land, and now I'm in a very good position. I have another Bowmasters, which is great. For this match, I have option to cast the Slitterwisp. Next turn, I have Grief. All of this while holding the Force of Negation for their turn if needed. So pretty good position, definitely. They destroy my data, so I decide to find my second triumph just to make a Leyland Binding more castable. And I decide to use Force of Negation on one ring at this point. I had a Slitterwisp and Ice Fang on the field doing 4 damage, had Grief there, plus double Bowmaster and the Leyland Binding. It's just pretty good draws. So Grief there takes the march, leave them with just 2 lands and the Chalice of the Void. They also find the Fatal Push and try to play it, but they forget they have Chalice of the Void on one, which just they had bigger problems with the Chalice than I did, so it was okay for me. Didn't care. And the opponent tries to go for the Shelliston 2. In response, I go for the Orcish Bowmaster and the second Orcish Bowmaster, which are only 2 mana spells for me at this point. And I put my opponent on 4 life, and this means this was lethal for the next turn, and my opponent concedes. That was it. That was the last game. So let's check out the match 4, win number 4 in this league. Okay, had Grief, but was missing Ephemerate effect. On turn 1, opponent I think was on Yagmoth. A lot of good stuff here, Solitude, Leyland Binding, all of these cards are very good in the Yagmoth matchup. Opponent plays the turn 2 Grist, which is pretty good, but mills Yagmoth and I had a solution for Grist, so I was in okay position. I was really looking for Undying Spell or Ephemerate at this point, just to play my Solitude, kill a lot of their stuff. I went for the Slitherwisp first, but my opponent plays the Chord in response, finds the Yagmoth. I had a Solitude for the... I should have played the Breeding Pool first. This way I would be able to cast the Ice Fang and still hold the Ephemerate. It was a slight mistake, but okay. So in response to the Yagmoth trigger, I played the Ice Fang to draw additional card from the Slitherwisp, and I let them kill my Slitherwisp and draw into 2 Ephemerates, so I just pass the turn holding a Solitude Ephemerate if needed. Opponent plays the double Young Wolf and just attacks for some damage there. I exile one of my Ephemerates, cast the second one, kill both, exile both of the Young Wolves, and block the Prosperous Innkeeper, gaining 3 life, killing their Innkeeper, and also untapping with the Grief plus Errant and Giada. This is pretty much unwinnable for the opponent, and I just do the rebound of Ephemerate, blinking Solitude, killing the last creature on their field, casting the Grief, and opponent seen enough. They concede. That was it. So let's check out another game. Okay, so in the game 2, let's see how I sideboarded here. Again, yeah, I think in all the games I removed the Sandwise. I think that was the only change. Just the Sandwise out. Opponent starts with the Havermite and the Wall of Roots, and I just do the... I didn't see the Bowmaster in my hand. I should have played the Bowmaster to kill the Havermite, so I do this incredible mistake and play the Leyland Binding. I didn't see the Bowmaster in my hand. I thought like Leyland Binding is dead with the Havermite on the field, going to use that. But just didn't see I can just play the Bowmaster and ping the Havermite and just use the Leyland Binding for the Yagmoth. And that was pretty much how I immediately lost this game. I decided to play the Bowmaster in response to the Yagmoth so they have less creatures to sack before I try to find a solution for the Yagmoth and kill it. So I went for the Ice Fang and didn't find a removal spell for the Yagmoth. So I let the opponent untap with a lot of creatures on the field, and when you're playing against Yagmoth deck, this is very much the losing position. My opponent had a very good hand, and I needed a miracle to come back. Of course, didn't get it, so that was pretty much the game. And let's check out the deciding match, the game 3. As you could see in all of these matches, games went to the match 3, and the games take a little longer. It's a deck full of creatures, but not that fast, except you go for the turn 1 Grief. It's a slower mid-range deck. I had Orcish Bowmasters. It's great against all these Dorks and also Ragavan, of course. Opponent plays the Geist, and I had a pretty good hand here. I was able to attack with the army token, hold back Giada and the Slitterwisp if needed. I went for the Slitterwisp on their turn, and when you're able to do this, it's an incredible advantage. I play Giada here, draw a card, I have Marsh Flats to see the top of my library and shuffle it if it's not good. I shuffle and find a Solitude on top, which is Solitude is definitely great in the Yawgmoth matchup. My opponent plays the Chord, finds the Dread Arbor, plays the Wolf Roots, Zulaport Cutthroat, and I find temporary lockdown on top of my library. I draw it with the Ice Fang ability and play the immediately lockdown and basically just exile all of the entire opponent's board. And I exiled also my Ice Fang, but that just doesn't matter that much. I still had Errant and Giada to look at the top of card of my library. I played the Ice Fang to draw the Grief from the top of my library and discard the Yawgmoth, leaving them with just a pylon in hand. They use it to kill the Grief, do the Surveil trigger, but yeah, like Giada does so much advantage here, and I had a another Slitterwisp on top of my library if needed. So I went for the Slitterwisp here. I also shuffle and immediately draw the Ephemerate. I block with both of these creatures and use the Ephemerate to blink the Ice Fang, draw additional cards, and with the Slitterwisp on the field and some damage, I'm able to finish the game in the same turn, and my opponent concedes. So that was it. That was the game. Last win of this league, and we will now watch the only defeat. Again, pretty decent hand. Like this is exactly the type of hand you want to have. Uh, Bullmaster, Ice Fang Coatls are very good at the start of the game when you have the Undying Spell or Ephemerate with the Pitchcast Elemental. That's really like what you want to have. Okay, so the 4-color Omnat matchup is depends, definitely depends. Um, but I think the halfling definitely makes it a bit harder than it was before. But yeah, like I had some subtleties before in the main, and I think subtleties in the main are pretty good in this matchup, and just improve the win rate incredibly. And if you're having a problem with this deck, I think you should probably just have some subtleties in the main instead of the Eartheye Resurrected. So I go for the Ephemerate, but my opponent pitchcasts the Solitude to get rid of the Orcish Bowmaster. And they play the Jace, the Mind Sculptor, and I think yeah, just like the Jace, the Mind Sculptor was really a deciding card in this game and really made things hard for me here. So I felt like forced to do this. This wasn't the greatest play, but I felt like I really need to do this to pressure the Brennan 6 and the Jace. So I attacked Jace for 1 damage, but they still had Brennan 6 plus Nissa plus Jace ability, which just drew them, made them look through lot of cards in their deck, and they were able to find the Fury, pitch cast it immediately, and then kill all of my board, leaving me with just Slitterwisp in hand. Slitterwisp is good, but unfortunately, it can't win me this match because my opponent now has Nissa plus Vren. And yeah, Jace was definitely the deciding factor in this game and the card which won the game for my opponent. Among other good top decks like Nissa, of course, and having Vren to have fetch. So that's it. I also have a dress downs on the sideboard, so a lot of good cards post board. Let's see how I boarded. As I said, I used all of the blue cards, a dress down, 4 force of negation, 3 subtleties. I think post board that is a very good sideboard. So I decided to kill that Ran immediately, and my opponent played the second Ran. Then pinged my Bowmaster, but I saved it with the Undying spell and played Rebound Ephemerate to kill the second Brennan 6, grow my army token, and pass the turn while holding both Slitterwisp and the Dress Down. So it was a pretty good position for me. My opponent then played the Leyline Binding. So opponent went for the Omnat. I decided to not let them draw a card, just play the dress down and pass the turn. My opponent went for Nissa, and again I decided to not let them play the fetch and get the extra value on get the Fury or Solitude or whatever. So I just wanted to get rid of this Nissa. I think this was really important, so I had to go for the Solitude on Nissa. Don't care about Omna that much. I just care about removing Nissa because I can't really let opponent get free cards to their hand, free elementals to their hand with Nissa ability. I just need to win this game by creating card advantage in my favor. My opponent unfortunately again had Fury to kill both of my creatures, so I was in a difficult spot here, but not impossible. So I had the Slitterwisp plus Dress Down. This means I can trade with the Fury. It doesn't mean it has a double strike because it loses the double strike with the Dress Down. So I play the Dress Down. I get 2 draws from the Dress Down, and I was able to trade with the Fury, surviving on 2 life. And now I had Solitude plus Force of Negation. So finally I was able to stabilize, and with a very good card in my hand meant that my opponent will need some good top decks. A second Force of Negation for me. I missed another land to be able to play the Grief and hold Force of Negation. I think that's why I decided to just pass the turn, hold the Slitterwisp. Also, if they had anything great in their hand, they would probably just play it last turn. So now I got the land and I decided to cast the Grief. They had only 2 lands in their hand, so it was pretty safe to attack and pretty comfortable win with the 2 Force of Negations in my hand. And yeah, my opponent concedes the game. So this was the last game of the league. The last loss, which caused me to not get the trophy. So I had to mulligan in 6, keeping a decent hand. Not spectacular, but playable. So I went for the Flooded Strand. Force of Negation plus Dress Down is pretty good. especially if you are able to cast the dress down after Slither Wisp, of course. Opponent had a turn 2 Teferi, which is pretty good. I decided not to use the Force of Negation. It was a good decision because I find the Orcish Bowmaster to immediately kill the Teferi. And then I used the Force to counter their Ren. I think this was a good counter. I saved my Orcish Bowmaster from dying and prevented the opponent from just getting infinite free lands every turn. And I was able to cast my third land. I didn't unfortunately have third black mana to cast the Slither, so I was forced to just cast the Errant and Giada. I find another land, but my opponent deals with Giada. End of turn, I played the Slitterisp, hoping for the Slitterisp to survive. I didn't have another black mana to cast the Malakir's Rebirth this turn, but anyway, they had Solitude, so it wouldn't mean much. I cast the Grief there, discarding the opponent's Fury, which would be very, very good for them. And at this point, I left them with just a Hell of Moonlight in their hand. Opponent also top deck the Endurance, so they were able to block my Grief. So I just traded with a Halfling. I think that's fine. So now I knew they have a Moonlight in hand, so I can't really use the Ephemerates and Undying spells. They're kind of dead. So now they use the second Leyland Binding. My opponent was able to start attacking here, and I decided to force them to use this Hollow Moonlight. It was creating me a bit of problems, didn't want to let them hold that card. And again, opponent finds the Jace, the Mana Sculptor, and they had 0 cards in hand, but on them untapping with Jace and doing another ability would be just too good. So basically, I lost to Jace, the Mind Sculptor, forgotten card in modern previous staple, big staple. So that was it. That was all the games from this league. I hope you like the league. Hope you like the gameplay. If you want to help the channel, click like, click subscribe. As I said, I didn't have Overgrown Tomb in this league I played, but I feel like it was really necessary. I would really like to have it. So definitely play that. I would ditch the 2 Samwise I had in that league for either two Ertai Resurrected or the Subtlety. I think Ertai fits in well, considering I need more black cards for the Grief and the blue cards for the post-board Force of Negation and the Subtlety, but also Subtlety is a fine choice for main if I had Subtlety in this last match in May, maybe I would be able to get the trophy. But I think Ertai Resurrected is also sweet because of the cool interaction with the pitch elementals. For 4 mana, you get to counter your evoke ability plus draw a card. Also, it's versatile. In other situations, it can kill some creature or counter a spell. It can be pretty good, and that is it. Okay, it's also a flash, of course, and that is it. I'm really happy with the list. I think this is the only flex slots in this version of a deck. 2 Ertais or 2 Subtleties or whatever is good in your meta game. It can also be Spellscatter Sprites if there's a lot of Cascade. Spellscatter Sprite is great in that matchup. I decided not to include it here. It was previously, as I said, 4 off instead of the Orcish Bowmaster. I feel like you don't need to play that card anymore in this archetype because it was replaced by directly better 2-drop and don't need more 2-drops. Also have a dress down on the sideboard, which is very good. 2-drop in matchups where it's good. And That is it. Once again, if you want to help the channel, click like, click subscribe, comment in the video, and that's it for today. Goodbye, and thank you for watching.